Shalom Aleichem, welcome back everyone. I know last week we did not have the privilege to get together. It was Purim, so we kind of did not have a shiur on Parshat Tzav. But Baruch Hashem, this week we're here, and we have Parshat Shemini. Parshat Shemini. Towards the second half of the Parashah Shishi and on, kind of talks about the kashrut, what's kosher and what's not. Today, Baruch Hashem, we live in a world where almost everything you can find that's kosher with a good hashgacha. You can eat a meat meal and then you can have a nice coffee with parva milk. Today, Baruch Hashem, we have access to a lot of kosher items that we take for granted, but in the previous generations they didn't really have. Now, we look through this parasha, and here we have a couple of animals. You have two kosher signs. We have a couple of animals that don't have two, has one. And the Torah tells us every time, Tamehu lachem. They are tameh, they're not pure, they're not good for you. Everything would be nice and good. The Torah said this. But we have way back in Parshat Noah, when Noah had to take the animals on to the teva, it says take the ones that are tahor, take two each, to take 7 of each, and the ones that are not tahor. It doesn't say the ones that are tameh. It says the ones that are not tahor, you take from them 2 of each. So the Chachamim tell us, why does it say there, and enu tahor, that's not tahor, and here it says tameh? There they tell us, it teaches us what? That you have to speak refined. When a person's speaking, instead of saying something is tameh, you should say it's not tahor. Okay? So do the same thing in this week's parasha. Why in this week's parasha, it doesn't say that the chazir is eneno tahor, it's not tahor. It doesn't say that. It says tameh, it's tameh. So why does it change it in this week's parasha? Why doesn't it say not tahor? Why over there it says not tahor, and why over there it doesn't say tameh? Why over here it says tameh and not tahor? We have to understand why it says what it says in each place. I brought down in 2 places an interesting story that helps us kind of understand why we make this distinction. There was a governor of a small group of villages, and he decided to make a visit to one of the smaller villages, very backward people there, farm communities, to see how they were doing and to see what he can do as governor for them. He gets there, and the mayor of this small farm community comes out to greet him, brings him to his house, and he gives him a cup of tea to drink. The cup of tea was made from water that came from a muddy stream, and it had a bunch of mud and all these other things inside there. So the governor takes a little sip and he spits it out. He's like, "What'd you give me? What'd you serve me?" And he said, "This is the water that we have." And he says, No, this is the water, but you have to know how to filter the water. So he took out some cloth and he showed them, every time you need to use the water to drink, you put it through this. And this mayor and his wife were very excited. Wow, we finally learned how to be more refined, with more etiquette, more nice, more elegant. And so they started to do this. The governor went away, and a few weeks later, a fire broke out in the farm community. And at the end, the governor got a report of what happened, and he finds out that most of the community got destroyed. So he asked, did they have enough water to take out the fire? They said yes. They had enough people in the fire department? Yes. So what happened that the fire didn't get burnt out? So Yosef said. So he goes to the mayor. He says, "The mayor, what happened here?" The mayor said, "Be very proud of what? Your whole community burned down." He said, "Yes, but we took the water and we filtered it, and then we sprayed it on the fire." And the mayor told him, "You fool! You filter for tea, for drinking. You don't filter for a fire. When a fire is raging, you put it out immediately, even with dirty water." The story of Noah, it's a story, it's a narrative. This is what happened. And so it's okay there to tell us it's not tar, to use a refined word. But when you have Not kosher. It's a fire. You got to tell someone this you can't have. You have to tell it with full force. You cannot say it's not tahor. You have to say it's tameh. You have to say it's strong. And you have to say it direct. There's a time and place for every expression. When etiquette will work, you got to use it. But when the fire is burning and the situation demands a powerful response, then you have to say it with full force. The Dubno Maggid gives a similar parable, the same type of idea, that there was a town, in the town lived two people, both of them were called Yosel. One was a wise man, he was a Chacham, he was a Talmid Chacham, very refined person. And the other Yosel was Yosel the Boer. He was ignoramus, Amo Aretz. One day, a man came to Yosel the Chacham's house and knocked on the door. And he was asking where he can find Yosel the Boer, the Amo Aretz. And the servant said, you're looking for Yosel the Boer. That guy, the one who doesn't know anything. You have to go look for him over there. When the Chacham Yosel heard this, he said to him, hello. We don't make fun of people. He came to ask you where someone was. You don't have to call him Yosel the Boer. You just tell him where you can find him. You don't have to say such things. We are refined people here. We don't talk this way. A little while later, a shadchan came. And the shadchan came to Yosel the Chacham and said, listen, I have a shidduch for you, for your son to Yosel the Amoritch's daughter. Yosel got very upset. He said, my son marry Yosel the Boer? Not while I'm alive. The shadchan right away left. The servant came and said to Yosel, I don't understand. Yesterday you told me when you're talking about that guy, you shouldn't say Yosel the Amoritch, Yosel the Boer. You said you should just call him Yosel. And today you yourself called him Yosel the Boer, Yosel the Amoritch. So he said, hello. When people are just asking information about Yosel, okay, Yosel is Yosel. When you're saying, you're saying a shidduch from my daughter, I got to make it very straight. This is a refined family, and that's a very non-refined family. You can't compare the two. With Noah, the impure animals are being listed for the purpose of information. So you don't have to say tameh. Say it's not tahor. In our Parsha, we're setting out the laws of kashrut. And when we're setting out the laws, you have to separate between the Jewish people and the non-Jews. We have kashrut, they don't have to have kashrut. We have kashrut, and as such, we have to be very careful and very straight. A student once asked Rav Elchanan Wasserman why he was using such harsh words when he talked about the wicked, when he talked about those who are going against the Torah. They said to him, the Torah uses extra letters to say that the animals were not tahor in Parshat Noah. And Rav Elchanan answered with the same idea. He said, when the Torah wanted to teach the Jews which food were eaten or not, it said tameh. It doesn't say not tahor, it says tameh. So too, when we have to defend our religion, we have to defend our practice, we have to say what it is. What's tameh and what's tahor? We learn, the Gemara tells us that a person who eats ma'achalat asurot, who eats foods that are forbidden, it makes what's known as metamtem et halev, it's timtum halev, which is, it clogs up a person's spiritual heart. If a person, Chas Shalom, eats non-kosher, he's going to find it very hard to come close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Pasuk says, Al tishaketzu nashotechem b'chol hasheretz hashoretz v'lo titameu b'hem b'nitmetem bam, and you will become contaminated through them. The Mesilat Yesharim says, one who is lenient, where Chazal says you have to be strict, such as forbidden foods. Chazal tells you to be very careful, and the person says, I'm not going to be careful. Whatever, some hashgacha, it says a K on the package, it's got to be kosher. It says TM. It's got to mean something. Yeah, it's letters. It has Hebrew letters on it, right? Chas v'shalom. He takes it easy. He says it's okay. The neshama Hashem gives him becomes literally the spirituality leaves him. He remains like a beast, like an animal. Forbidden foods are worse than other sins. The Mesilat Yesharim says, you know why? Because when you eat, you take from the food and it becomes part of your body. The nourishment, it goes into your cells, it goes into your body. When you eat ma'achalot asurot, it becomes part of you. There was a famous story, many people heard the story. Rabbi Akiva Eiger, the Gaon, Rabbi Akiva Eiger visited the city of Lamza. And the wife of the city's Av Beit Din came, and she said, we have 7 sons, 6 of them learning Torah, no problem. The 7th one doesn't want to learn Torah, doesn't have Yirat Shemayim. We don't know what to do. We tried everything. The Gaon, Rabbi Akiva Eiger says, your son ate ma'achalot asurot. He ate forbidden food. She says, impossible. They only eat at home. It cannot be. He said, there's no other reason. If all your other sons are following the Torah and he's not, it must be he's clogged with tumah from the non-kosher food. So this woman went and told her husband, who was the Av Beit Din of the city. And they couldn't know where. Where would he get it from? So they asked him. And he said, no, I didn't. But then he remembered. He said one day on his way home from Heder, there was a wedding going on in the wedding hall. And someone invited him in and he ate some of the meat. And when they looked into that wedding, it was a man who divorced his wife, and the get that he gave wasn't kosher, and the Chachamim said he has to write a new get, but he refused. And the Rabbanim of that time, including the great Rav Shneur Zalman, the Baal HaTanya, he said anyone who goes and eats at his wedding, anyway, this man is not allowed to marry, and if he marries, that wedding, all the food that's there is considered asur. And it was from this meat that this boy had eaten. And that is what happened to him. He lost his ability. What do you have to do in such a point? Person, the Rabbi Akiva Eiger said that he has to learn Torah with great effort. He has to stay away from all physical pleasures and comforts. He has to go the other way. You got into non-kosher food, and that got you to be mitamtim et halev. You have to now go in the opposite way, not indulge, and go completely with Torah to get back out. The Shach says, in Yeridea, he warns strongly to parents. He says, don't think that it's okay to serve your children food that has questionable kashrut. You know, it's okay for the kids. It's okay for the kids. He doesn't eat it. The wife doesn't eat it. But it's okay for the kids. He says this is a terrible idea. It's a terrible idea to do this. The Ramban explains. He says when a person eats foods, it becomes part of him, right? Now, if you take a look, all the birds that are asur to eat, one of the reasons the Ramban says asur to eat the birds is because the birds, it rips apart its food with its claws. When a person eats these type of birds, he takes in within himself these violent, merciless tendencies into his body. But when a person eats kosher meat of domesticated animals, it's beneficial for the person because Tiv'am yoter noah, they're more easygoing. The animals that, you say you are what you eat. You really are what you eat. And it takes a spiritual toll on the body. The Gemara tells us a very interesting idea. The Gemara tells us that Rabbi Hiyah, you know what Rabbi Hiyah would do to make sure Torah was not forgotten from the Jewish people? He went and he got some flax. He grew the flax. Then he weaved nets from the grown flax, and he trapped deer. So he grew the flax. He then made the flax into nets. Then he trapped the deer. I fed the meat to the orphans, and I prepared scrolls of parchment from the deer skins. And then I wrote 5 humashim, and I teach it to 5 children. Then I teach each of the 6 children a different one of the Mishnah, and then I tell them to teach each other. In this way, I make sure Torah was never forgotten. The Vilna Gaon asks, why Rabbi Chia has to start from growing flax and making nets? Just go teach the Torah. Buy a book, do it. The Vilna Gaon said, every one of the actions leading up to the children's Torah study, he has to be kosher. From beginning to end. Only in that way could you be sure that the Torah the children are learning would stay with them forever. If Chas Shalom, a person would use non-kosher activities to gain money and then either feed his children or teach his children through that way, Rav Mendel Rimanov says, the parents of these children that are earning money dishonestly, unkosher money, all their children, the purity of their nishamot go away. So we see how important it is that we have to make sure that we eat what's really kosher. It's our makeup. It's going to become us. The Seforno asks a question. The Seforno says, okay, up until this point, I already cast a couple parashiot. We're talking about the Mishkan, the building of the Mishkan. We started Sefer Vayikra of all the korbanot that I put on the Mishkan. And now you talk about kashrut. What's the connection that we're going from Mishkan to kashrut? So the Seforno explains. You have to remember when it said, when we're building the Mikdash, Hashem said, I don't want just a Mishkan. I want to be v'shachanti betocham. I want to rest amongst you. The Mishkan is just a place, but Hashem says, I want to be really inside all of you. Now, how do we get Hashem inside us? Just like the Mishkan, you have to have everything exactly the right way. In order for us to have Hashem in us, Shanti B'tocham, in our houses, in ourselves, you have to make sure that you're eating kosher food. Not something that's going to block us from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. When Moshe Rabbeinu was a little baby and Bitya picked him up and gave him around, he didn't drink from anyone because he was going to speak directly to Hashem. The Navi, Yoel, tells us that in the time of Mashiach, that the daughters and sons of Israel are going to be having nevuah from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. How are we supposed to have nevuah if Chas Shalom, the food that we're eating are not kosher? When Mashiach comes, we're all going to be getting nevuah. But in order to get nevuah, we have to be connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. If Chas Shalom, we would eat something not kosher, you lose that connection. With Hashem's help, Baruch Hashem, like we said, eating kosher today is much easier. Right? Everything is kosher. You can find everything with a good hashgacha. You can find pre-check, this, that, everything you can find. Baruch Hashem, we have Rabbanim that tell us what's good, what's not. And Bezat Hashem, we should be zocher to the coming of Mashiach. Amen. Let's move on to another, so that was 2 lessons. Let's move on to our 3rd lesson from this week's Parashah. We have, interestingly, also again about kashrut. Every time the Torah tells us about the 4 animals that have one of the 2 signs of kashrut, it tells us the kosher sign first, and then the non-kosher sign. So it says, Et hagamal, ki maleh gerahu, and right, it chews its cud, ufarsa enenu mafris, and then it doesn't split its hooves. So it chews its cud, doesn't split it. So it says the kosher part first, and then the non-kosher part second. Why is it stating it this way? Why not say the non-kosher part first? Why state the kosher part first? So Rav Pam learns an amazing lesson from here. He says, when we're giving tochacha, giving musar, you want to tell somebody they did something wrong, you first have to tell them something good about that. Right? The animal, yes, you have chewing the cud, but you don't have split hooves. So same thing, you want to tell your son or daughter you're doing X and Y, Z wrong. You tell them, you do this very good. You're very good singing. You're very good this, very that. But you're not doing this and that. It's a little more, they get a little bit more in tune to listen when you realize that they have positive traits also. If all you're focusing is on the negative, then they're not going to really listen. Rav Pam would say that when he was a Rebbe in the yeshiva on Torah Vedat. He was at a PTA, and one of the fathers that came, he was a big Talmud Chacham, and he was a Rav in the community, and he told him, listen, your boy is very smart, but if he would try a little harder, he'd be much better. And when the father heard, he said, what? Let me call my son inside. He called his son inside the class, and Rav Pam now, oh my gosh, what did I say? Now he's going to start telling his son, you could be better. And Rav Pam was surprised how the Rav took it. He told his son, your Rebbe says you're doing excellent. And if you would try a little more, you're going to be extremely good. And the son's face lit up. He was so happy. And Rav Pam looked at it, he said, wow. So you see how you can get to a child. All you have to start off is nicely. Not Hashalom say, oh, you're this. Hashalom. Like we all have heard in the past how people talk. But instead, we should find a good part and segue into what you have to tell them. However, Rav Pam says, based on another place, from the Klei Yakar, a different reason of why it says the kosher sign first. The Klei Yakar says the reason why it says the kosher sign first is because the Torah wants to tell us to be very careful. Klei Yakar, why does it start by noting that one kosher sign? He explains that by saying the fact that these animals have one kosher sign makes their non-kosher status worse. Meaning, Hashem is saying, yes, they have one kosher sign, but that makes them even worse than an animal has two non. When you know an animal has two non-kosher signs, you know they're not kosher. But one kosher sign, like the pig, he sticks out, his husband says, I'm split, I'm kosher, I'm shalom. Right? You have to be even more careful when it comes to that. The Klei Yakar, he bases this and he says that really the truth is not just the animals have kosher signs, but every Jew has kosher signs. And every Jew has two kosher signs. And what are the kosher signs of a Jew? His way of acting between people and his way of acting between him and Hashem. If a person just nice to Hashem, but he's not nice to other people, he's lacking sorely in his kosher signs. If a person's nice to people, nice to Hashem, he's also lacking from the two kosher signs. A real Jew is someone who has both kosher signs. If Hashem, someone only has one of those kosher signs, it's worse than if he had none. Because a person can think, he shets a tzaddik, he's doing so much chesed, but really, he doesn't care about HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he doesn't care about Hashem. And we know that a person is only nice if he doesn't really believe in Hashem and care about Hashem and care about the mitzvot. He's only nice when things go good. As soon as things don't go good, he'll start cursing out everybody in the world. The world has never produced a Hafetz Chaim like we have a Hafetz Chaim. We never had someone who can do this. Because just being nice is not enough. And if a person walks around and he makes himself all religious and he's all about HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but when it comes to people he cannot get along, what is he doing? That's not what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants. And so it's important to have two. And I want to end off with a story that's brought down by Rav Galinsky. The story, we said that the pig sticks out his hooves and says, I'm kosher. But for a while, he's not kosher at all. The Midrash says, this is Esav. Esav goes around telling everybody, I'm the best. But meanwhile, he's doing all the bad things in the world. Rav Galinsky says, he once heard a story from a Talmud in his yeshiva. The boy was from Baghdad, and he heard it from his grandfather. In Baghdad once, they caught a thief. And they brought him to the judge, and the judge said, we have to kill him. Thieves, you have to kill him. So he said, okay, the guy's about to get executed. To listen, but before you kill me, I need to speak to the caliph. I need to talk to him. My last request, let me speak to the caliph. So they took him to the caliph. He comes to the caliph. I'm going to shorten the story a little bit. And he says to him, listen, if you kill me, I'm going to die. And it's going to be a worser sin than me stealing. They said, what do you mean? He says, I stole, I made a mistake. You're right, you have to kill me. But I have a secret. And if you kill me, the secret will be forgotten forever. And it's going to be worse than anything in the world. This secret can help you. So he says, what's the secret? He says, the secret is that I know a special spell that You plant a tree today, the tree will grow and produce fruit already today. I have the spell that would work, guaranteed. So he said, really? He said, yes, and if I don't tell people, it's going to be forgotten and no one else will know, and it's going to be chaval. So he said, okay, let's go. Tell me. The thief said, no, I cannot tell you. There's too many people here. I want you, the king, and the finance minister to all get together, and I'm going to tell you the secret. We'll do it together. He said, okay. He got the king, he got the finance minister, and the caliph, and everybody was listening. The king thought this is great. He's going to solve all the problems with food and everything. They're going to be able to plant a tree, grow food. So he said, okay, they took the tree, they planted it, and now everyone's looking at the thief. No, go ahead, show us how this works. He said, listen, I tell you how it works. The spell will only work for somebody that has never stolen an item in his life. You know, I got caught for thievery, so I can't do it. But Caliph, come on, you're a tzaddik, right? Go ahead, say these words and it's going to happen. And he said, listen, I'm a good guy, but you know, when I was younger, I was a little mischievous, I made a little problems, I stole things from my brothers, my sisters, my friends. It's not going to work for me. He says, okay, listen, we're all human. Finance minister, you, go ahead. The finance minister says, listen, I'm a good guy, but a lot of money comes through my hands. I'm working with money all day long. So, you know, maybe $1, $2, whatever, thousands of dollars, whatever, it just might have disappeared. It's not my fault, you know, and so much money I'm working on. He says, okay. And he turns to the king, you. And the king says, listen, I'm the king, you know, everything here, there. I don't know. It's not, I can't do it. So the thief falls on his knees and says, you the rulers and ministers of the kingdom, you admit that you're not so innocent. And you have everything. You never lacked for food. I stole because I have no money. I need to feed my family. And me you want to kill. And for you guys who have everything and you stole and you admit to stealing, you don't want to kill. How does that make any sense? That's what they do. They walk around saying they're kosher. They say, you have to punish this guy, punish that guy. Meanwhile, all those things they have in themselves. I want to end with these 3 lessons, just to review them quickly. Our first lesson we had was that when it comes to serious issues, you cannot be speaking refinedly at that time. We have to say it as it is to make it strongly known what's kosher and what is terif and what is not kosher. At the same time, we learned, shalom, when a person eats not kosher, what it does to him, becomes part of his body, and it makes him further from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And we also learned the importance of giving good feedback first before we give the feedback that we want to fix someone up with. And we learned to be a person with 2 kosher signs. Ben Adam Makom, Ben Adam Havero, between a man and Hashem, between a man and another fellow man. And as well as not to be a hypocrite like Esav, like the Hazir, walking around and showing everybody that he's kosher, but inside he himself does all the wrong things and is teref. Bezat Hashem should give us all, one and all, a Shabbat Shalom. Bezat Hashem, next week is going to be already Shabbat Rosh Chodesh Nisan. We're looking forward to the Geulah. Amen. Shabbat Shalom.